Everyone, and welcome so much to our live demo. So happy to be here with artist Maggie Sutrov. Maggie, based in Hawaii. Oh my goodness, what a wonderful climate to be in. We're just, oh, hang on, let me get that muted. There we go. Sorry about that, everybody. As many of you, I think, already know, my name is Maria Coriel Martin. I'm the founder of Art Toolkit. And Maggie, you are a passionate artist and teacher on the island of Maui. And we have loved seeing the work you're doing, so much of it oriented around the water, which, as many of us are coming into the summer season, is just near and dear to so many of our hearts. Myself, I'm also an open water swimmer and just passionate about being in the sea. So just so excited to have you here.
Thank you so much. I am so excited to be here. I love painting on site. That's been my passion since I was a teenager, and I grew up here on Maui. And so as a teenager, I discovered painting on site. That time I was an oil painter, but then at a certain point I went off to Southeast Asia and I'm like, well, that stuff's not gonna travel well, and became a watercolor artist. And my art toolkit palette goes everywhere with me, and I paint wherever I go. But even more than that, it's to share the beauty around us and to have people notice more and be present and to connect with the places around them and to express the places that are so dear to them. And being an island girl, the ocean is definitely dear to me, and it's such an amazing subject matter to paint. And so to share that with people today, whether you're getting ready to go to the beach or the ocean is in your neighborhood or you're just dreaming of it, then all those ways we can use this to have this experience together.
Oh, I love what you just said about, art and that chance for connection. I often think of art as just this practice of attention, practice of awareness, and sitting down and giving a subject our time and attention helps us get to know it better, see it from different perspectives, appreciate it, and it's also a whole lot of fun.
Yeah. When I'm taking people out to paint, I always talk about it in terms of gathering experiences. And so it's not about what that end product is, it's what experiences you gather along the way. And some of those are how things worked on the paper, but then also just a chance to be and get to take that place into you. And that's the value. That's the number one value. And then what you create, that's just the added bonus. But because you were creating, you got to have this experience in a place, and that's going to stick with you, and that artwork is going to remind you and bring you back to that experience.
Oh yeah, I always remember things so much more vividly after sketching them. And we have people joining in from so many different spots. We're just glad to have you all here, and I'll be watching the chat during our demo today. And I love seeing where you're all coming from. So if you haven't yet shared in the comments your location, we love that. If you have any questions throughout the demo, put them in, and I'll do my best to get to everybody's as much as I can. And in the meantime, Maggie, I'll turn things over to you. We'd love to hear a little bit more about your background and what you've got to share with us today. And I've got my supplies on my table, and I'm really excited to paint along as well.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, I think probably the best way to do this is to sort of let's jump in. And what I really love to share is the experience of painting on site. And of course, we're connected through the internet and Zoom and YouTube and in our studios and everything today, but to use this as a way to gather some experiences that you can take with you on site, and to use this as a way that when you are at the ocean's edge, that you can use this and use pieces of this. And if you're like, I'm not getting the ocean anytime soon, this still can be a connection to those places and parts of this process. Maybe you'll find other access points into your process. And so even though I'm in the
Lakes
studio,
too, lakes and ponds.
yes, exactly. Exactly. There might be less waves, but you still have movement of the water, and you still have just water is an amazing medium. I mean, like that's why watercolor is so amazing, because it's really like it's where the water goes, the paint will flow. And that's the main rule of watercolor. And you can have, I think traditional watercolorists will have all their techniques and they might call them rules, but it's like, no, they're techniques. You can use them if you want. You can do the wash like that and let it dry just perfect. Or you can go, I don't have time for that because the light's about to change. And so you can call on those. But the rule is where the water goes, the paint will flow. And so we're painting with water, and we're painting water as our subject. And so there's this beautiful connection there.
Oh, you distilled that beautifully. I just love that. Where the water flows, the watercolor goes. I mean, I feel like a lot of life there. There's some bigger.
It's kind of just physics. Like the rules of watercolor are really like the physics of the materials. I mean, the atmosphere, how humid it is going to affect if your paint's going to dry quickly or not. I'm in Hawaii, so it's humid here. Like what paper you use is going to affect it. But like those are really the rules. And then we get to use that. Like that's everything else is expression. So how we use that, how we use our materials and whatnot.
And then embracing the happy accidents and all the unknowns.
Yeah. Exactly. It's like, it's okay. Where the water goes, the paint will flow. Oh, that bit of water went there and the color went there. Oh, well, that's what happens. And so that's part of the fun. And so I think to get us into here is, I love to paint on site. We're in the studio today, but I want to give us a little bit of feeling of being there. And so I'm going to share a short video that's just some clips that I took of ocean spots around my island. And this can just start to bring us there a little bit. And I have video today rather than photos, because the ocean doesn't stop. It's always moving. And there's a pattern in here that we're looking for. And I have just a couple different clips. And so I've got 2 different locations and different views within the location so that you can see the pattern of how the waves move. So when you are in plein air, when you are there, that wave isn't going to wait around for you, but there'll be another one. And that wave might be larger, smaller, crest a little bit differently, but still you can reference and see the patterns, in each place is going to have its own patterns. But there are some aspects that we can distill down so that when you go out there, your eyes are keyed into noticing certain things. And then you can hopefully let those key things kind of just be in the back of your mind, and you can have this experience, but you have some touch points that you can call upon. And so that is my hope for today. And so we're going to be looking at the patterns within these waves. And one great thing about video, though, is that I can also go, oh, I really like what's happening right at that moment, or maybe even this wave is even clearer. Let's see, where's the moment that I really like? Maybe I want it right when it's cresting, so I can stop and study it. I can stop video, but we don't want just painting from a photograph to become a crux either, because then we're losing the movement, we're losing the connection. When people are like, well, I paint from photographs, it's like, well, like you're creating art, wonderful, but try painting from life, because a photograph is already captured in still. Whereas when you're painting from what's really there, your whole being is the camera. It's getting exposed through what you see your mind, not through your hand. And so it's a very different and rich experience. So we want to stay connected to that.
Yeah, wonderful using video.
Yeah, but the video will help us sort of have use both ways today to the extent that we need to, so that when you go to the ocean, you've got it all. And so I'm going to do a new share here so that I can have my desk. And I have some various things on my desk, and there we are, focusing. And I just wanted to share, because I'm going to be distilling down what is our real, or what is a way of really noticing what's happening with the waves today. But that when I am painting on site, a lot of times it comes out differently. This one is one that I did plein air that has a lot of that same feel to it. But other times these were very quick, like 3-minute studies, and you have the feeling of the ocean, even though it is having less of that more specific feel to it, but it is definitely in there. And then there are ones where I was able to spend more time and really notice what is happening with the waves. But then on other times, that was what I was feeling that day. And so we've got the movement in there. We have this feeling of the dark and the light. We have the motion, we have the pattern, but it didn't come out the same way, but it's still in there. So this isn't the only way to do it, but it's a way for you to notice more and then have your own movement and expression. That I actually did this one in Taiwan. And then this one was one I did just recently. And you can see that that actually is from this one of the spots in that short video that we did. And so
I love the energy and immediacy you've got in those sketches. You know, they definitely have that plein air where you're out, maybe the wind is blowing and you're watching the water. And, you know, I think that's some of the joy of being outside, is that you're reacting to not just the subject in front of you, but just the whole environment.
Yes, exactly. It's all in there. And so like when people are asking what colors for today, it's like, well, I'm going to, for this lesson, we're going to be looking more at value, dark and light, and at the stroke and the movement, but the color is of whatever place that you're painting. And the many blues of the ocean, because the ocean absorbs reds and it reflects out blues, but it's also a mirror, and whatever sort of water, your stream, your lake, whatnot, is a mirror. So of those places around you. So if there's colors in the sky, they're going to end up in the water and whatnot. And so looking at where is it warmer, where is it cooler, and finding those relationships. And I'll talk about what colors I'm using along the way, but it's more about what you notice rather than let's use this, I'll use this pigment and those sorts of things. But I do want to share one of my favorite tools, because this changed my life as an artist, and making art's the main thing I do. So it really did change my life, is the water brush. And I am sorry that I am having focusing issues here. It was looking
good now. Oh, we love water brushes. They're such handy tools. They take some practice, but boy, are they handy.
Exactly. And so when I first met one of these, it was like, wait a second, I don't need to bring a cup of water with me anymore. And I absolutely love it, but they do take some practice. And so a little warm up that I find is so useful, that I always have people do when they are new to water brushes. And really, if you're like, I don't use those, I have my own brush. If that brush is something that you are just so used to having in your hand, then you already have this in you. But anytime you're using a new tool, you need to get to know, what does that tool do? I mean, if you're used to one hammer and then you couldn't find to use a different hammer, that's going to take a moment for you to get used to. Of course, the same with paintbrushes. And so what I want to do is I want to see how thin a line I can make. And I'm seeing how much water I need. And I realized my brush was very dry to begin with.
And maybe
there wasn't putting any water in.
Of what brand paints you prefer in your palette, if you have a preference.
I have mostly Daniel Smith in here. I think that's primarily what I have. Sometimes I end up with a little bit of something else, but mostly Daniel Smith. And yeah, I've got a Prussian right here, seeing how thin a line I can make with here. And so seeing what's the thinnest line you can make. And I'm using a Pentel Aquash brush size large. You always want to use the largest brush that you can, even one that makes you feel a little uncomfortable. Of course, then if you're using a water brush, you're limited in size. So I try to split the difference. And the large still has a pretty good tip for when you do have details you want to do. And so it's practicing how thin a line I can make. And then these brushes, because if I'm painting on site, a lot of times this is the one brush that I'm using. I might have multiple so that I can just grab the next one instead of refilling this part here. I might have a couple others, but I'm going to use mostly this brush. So what is all the possibility of this brush? Well, if I hold my hand like this, I can use the side of it and get quite an amazing thick line. So right now I am not squeezing, and you can see that I'm getting some dry brush action there. And that actually is an amazing thing to use when you're painting waves. Oh my goodness, look, I'm already getting some waves just like that. And so that was me not squeezing my brush. Like I had a little bit of water on there from when I picked up the paint. And so I'm seeing how thick am I when I use it from the side? But then, okay, what if I really want it to cover? Then I can squeeze slightly as I go. And of course, if you're new to this tool, how much to squeeze your water is one of the major things. And I always have a paper towel handy for squeeze and wipe to clean it off if I need to. But this time, squeezing a little bit as I went, it made this wonderful, smooth, wide area. So I was able to actually cover a lot of space with a brush that isn't very large. And I was also getting these tiny little marks. And I've been using Prussian blue, but we have so many different colors of blue in the ocean. This is also, of course, a time to test out different colors, see how you're feeling today. I'm going to do another one of these where I'm doing the same thing, where I'm squeezing a little bit as I go. Whoops, let's squeeze a little bit more. And then I'm going to wipe my brush, and I'm going to do one more with the clean brush. I'm going to make a soft edge here. So I had a hard edge, and now instead, and sometimes it needs a little squeeze, sometimes there's enough water that you don't need. And I've got a soft edge there. And so that is right there, so much of what we're going to be using in this process today. Sometimes you're going to want some thin lines. Sometimes you're going to want using the side of your brush without paint. Sometimes you're going to want it thick with more water flowing there. And as you see, we're already starting to get some of the sort of magic of watercolor, those little variations, which just become part of what's happening in the ocean. And I mean, like, this piece is full of those bits of magic there. And so that's a wonderful way to warm up. And of course, you can then, as I did here, like, well, let me go between the different ways of working and bounce back and forth. Maybe there's a couple other colors I need to try. Oops, yeah, I already did Prussian. I dove back into it. Here's some phthalo blue, which is so intense and takes over sometimes, but also amazing. And then I use French ultramarine more than all the rest of my blues. That's the one that I fill up on my palette the most often.
I heard someone describe phthalos as bossy, which I've been thinking about.
that's how I generally call it too. It's like, yeah, phthalos are bossy. They're lovely, but man, do they like to push all the other colors around. So I use them, but sparingly, and less than, for phthalo blue, definitely less than the other blues. And so that's a little bit of warm up there, and a little bit of just, okay, what are these patterns in the waves? I'm going to give us just a little bit of feel of that here. Do a tiny bit of drawing just so that we can see what we're looking for. And we'll look back at that video. See, this drawing I've already done, but depending on where you are painting, what view you were being inspired by, well, the waves, they're rolling through the ocean, and then they respond to the coastline, the swell as it wraps around the coastline, and what angle you're looking at it. And so what I'm going to show you, it varies by what the coastline is. So here's a little sketch of a place that I know well, and then, but I'm watching, okay, what are the angle of the wave? So here I have basically just highlighted what are those angles. Or if it's coming in this way, as you see that when they're out at the horizon, they're sort of the straightest, and then it might sort of fold in around the coast. And then of course, other times you're just looking straight out and they're coming straight in. And of course, this is the simplest way to sort of learn this pattern, but then you can adjust it to what is happening in your area. And so,
and those patterns really contribute to a sense of like perspective, space, depth, that you just identified.
yes, exactly. So that's all just things to notice and to play with when you are painting the specific view that's calling to you, the specific location that you are at. And the parts of the wave that we're going to sort of be aware of here is, I've broken it down here, I'll do it again here, is we've got the top of the wave and we've got the bottom of the wave. And right now I have those lines sort of the same length, but a lot of times I have them a little off from each other. And that, I'll show you how that does it next. And then we have where this wave is breaking, how it is falling over. And so that part is going to kind of come up and comes up to the crest. And sometimes it even goes above that line, and then it's going to come down, possibly as low as that other line, and then it's going to come back up. And so we've got how the wave is spilling over. And then, of course, sometimes all of this is that whitewash. And actually, here, I'll put this down here too. That is a screenshot from the video. We've got these areas that go up above, and we have these areas where you can still see the top of the wave. And so I've got up there, I've got up there, and I'm going to bring this down here. And so this part is all coming over, and this part is coming this way. And of course, sometimes there's a little bit of splash, maybe a little bit of ehukai is what we call it here in Hawaii, the sea spray.
Say that one more time, what you call it?
Ehukai.
Ehukai.
I think there's the okina there. But kai is ocean in Hawaiian. And so the sea spray that you see coming off of here. And this video is taken right outside of Ma'alaya Harbor, which is the second windiest small boat harbor in the world. And it's somewhere we spend a lot of time because my husband, well, he built a boat and we just launched a private charter boat company. And so I've been spending a lot of time on the water, and even though it's super windy there, we get around the corner and we're out of the wind completely. But the wonders of being on an island and been painting out on the water. So that's been lovely too. But just wanted to give us a little bit of that sort of, okay, how does this, what are these pieces we're noticing here? The top of the wave, the bottom of the wave. How does it spill over? Where does it come over the back? Every wave is different. Where it's that top of the break. And so we have some of that there just to give us a feel of what's happening here. And I think with that, rearrange things so that we have a bit of things to look at, but also I can get painting. And so I'm going to do two small demos. And I think the first, or one of these, I'm going to do a wash for the sky. And as I was saying, it really depends on how much time you have on site, how you want to use techniques and whatnot. Of course, traditionally, we would have a sky or a wash painted first for sky, for painting back to front. But other times you're like, I gotta just paint those waves now. So this first one, I'm going to put in some color for the sky. And so I'm using the side of my brush. I'm softening that down. I'm using the cobalt right now. But maybe this is sort of like this one has a lot of those sunset colors in there. I'm going to put a little bit of some quinacridone rose there that I've got. Put a little bit of that in there. And let those flow together, maybe a little bit more of the cobalt. Oops, that got a lot darker there, but we'll go with that. And should have left more space for the ocean, I realized, but we'll make that work. And actually, I do want more space for the ocean for demo. So I'm just going to pull up a little bit with my paper towel. I love using the Viva paper towels because they have the least texture there, but I'm going to let that one just dry, and so that I have this one I can come back to that has some sky to it, but then also just do one where I'm jumping right in for the wave part of what we're doing. That way we have more than one to work with.
I love that mix of the warm and cool colors in the sky you added there. And yeah, I love that the multiple pieces at once outside is terrific, because then while you're waiting for one to dry, you can bounce back and forth.
Exactly. And if you're the sort of artist who really wants those layers to be dry in between, then that's a great way to work. A lot of times for me, I'm more, whatever the speed of painting and the atmosphere, the heat of the day and everything, it's sort of like, well, is today going to have lots of washes, or is today going to have a lot of glazing? Like, I kind of just go with what's happening. And so if that paint is drying, then the next layer just goes on top of dried paint. And if everything is flowing together a little bit because it's misting outside or just about to, then that's that collaboration with our environment that goes into the art. And so I play a lot in that way with how I paint, but sometimes, yeah, you do need to let something dry. And so for doing the ocean itself, I'm going to start with the horizon. And for this demo, I'm going to say, go with whatever colors are calling to you. I'm going to start with a French ultramarine blue. And I'm going to start with, like, just how I did here, that thinnest line. Says, you know, that horizon, it is sort of the one straight line in nature, even though it's an illusion. But that edge of the earth, let's paint that. And then I really do want that to not stay a straight line. And silly color. Apparently it's saying it wants to dry very quickly today. So I'm adding some water to it immediately to have it loosen up on that edge. So I made that soft edge, but I can keep making that edge soft. But the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say that, you know what? There's some waves out here in the distance. And so as I bring in here, I'm going to let there be a break out there. And some of those edges, you see I have a hard edge for what I just put in, and I used a Prussian blue for that next line. And some parts of the French ultramarine, I had a hard line, and some spots I had a soft line. And so with that again, I can do a bit more here. And if I end up with a hard line where I don't want one, it's like, well, that's just part of the ocean. And I kind of am enjoying how soft it is there, but I'm going to darken it up in some areas. And so right now I'm just playing with different blues. I just put a little bit of cobalt in there. But what we're really thinking about was with waves, we have dark lights, dark lights. And even though this picture here doesn't have waves breaking in the background, you do still have that swell coming in. You have those other parts there. And so we're really noticing, I said, like, this exercise is more about value and stroke than it is about color. It's of course about color, but it's secondary to what we're really what we're focusing on. It's the play with that as well, rather than the main thing. And so now I've got these waves here, and I'm just going to, like I said, dark light, dark light. And so I've got what was the top of the wave, and now I'm having the wave folding over. So it's breaking, and I don't want a hard line there in the middle of where it's breaking. So I'm going to fill that in before I run out of time right there. And I don't want that to be a hard line, so I'm going to make it a soft line. And I have a wonderful soft wave there. Now, if I want this to have a little bit more of what's going on in this wave, for instance, where is it dark, where is it light within the wave, then I can go back in, especially while it's damp, and add a little bit more. Because we've got sort of the main dark light, dark light. Where's the wave breaking? Where's the wave not breaking? But then within the wave, you can notice, where is it darker? It's darker under here, because that's going to be in shadow, and I can drop a little bit in, especially while it's still wet. And if it's already dried, then just fade it out a little bit. And so I've got some darker blue underneath there, but also there are those areas where you can see where the wave is spilling over, where that's not where it's breaking. So you might have a little bit of darkness on top. Not everywhere, but see how that is changing the nature of that wave there.
Maggie, do you think you could hold that up a little closer to the camera so we could see a little closer?
How about that?
Oh, wonderful. And then I know you've been posting, shared in the description, some of the blues you've used. Would you mind, after the demo, sending us a list of your full colors we can post for everybody?
Yes, definitely.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, so right now I've got, I think that was French ultramarine I was just putting in. I had some Prussian in there, some cobalt. So I've been playing with those blues. And now I'm going to do a larger blue, kind of warmed up with some of those. I'm sorry, a larger wave. And so we've got this wave here. I'm going to be kind of inspired by that one since we have it there. But also we have that video, and you can always pull up that video on a secondary device and find a spot within it. And actually, maybe it's too many things. I don't know if it's too many things to have under over here, but we can be inspired by it with this. And so we've got some of those other locations, and I think I was channeling more this sort of wave action than the printout I have here when I was doing in the distance. But we're being inspired by these places, and I wanted to show sort of those waves coming in there. And here you can see that it has a bit of that angle around the coastline, like we were talking about, though this is more of the looking straight out, just sort of as a good starting point there. And there we are, back to the beginning. So see, this is the same location as that. And so now I'm going to do one of these, sort of a wave that is coming up closer to us. And having that soft edge there, it also allowed me to pause for a moment instead of being like, I've got hard edges, I got to keep painting, and so now I'm going to go, okay, so I've got the top of my wave, and I've got a little loop there. I'll have that disappear. And I'm going to take a little bit of fallow with my cobalt, just to, let's go bold here. And I'm going to go, okay, where's that wave breaking? I'm going to do the bottom of it first, because I kind of have the top of it a little bit already here. And so I've got the underneath of it, and I've got under where it's breaking, and then I'm going to bring it back up like that. And I'm going to make this a soft edge again.
Lots of awareness of the white space, the negative shapes.
Yes, exactly. Letting that white stay, because that's such a major part of the wave. And so I'm letting that part be there. And then I can go back and define the top of the wave some more. There's might be a little bit that I want to fade back into there, what I'm feeling there. And I'm going to fill in some of that, but also some of that, just that soft edge, I'm sort of loving that. So I don't want to get rid of that completely. And so I'm sort of just bringing that in a little bit, finding where is that for the wave. And I'm picking up some of the color there, sort of drying my brush, picking some of it up. So I was sort of felt like it was telling me, no. Let's see, yeah, do a little bit. There, that's feeling lovely. But I want to have that where you can see that it's spilling over and it's quite, come on, go back to the beginning. There we go.
You're creating a sense of that tube, so that's spilling over that curve.
Exactly.
And your lines are coming together to build that illusion of the, I'm imagining like paper towel tubes that they're curling over.
Exactly. And so there's the colors that are in the distance beyond the wave, but then there's this part that is right there. And like I said, where the water goes, the paint will flow. And so some of this it's wet there. So I'm only getting a soft line there rather than a hard line right now. But I can come back to that. And it's already giving me some of that. And I can also put some color in the shadow underneath the tube. And I'm going to throw a little bit of Alizarin Crimson into this wave here in the shadow. So I just mix it with the blue that I had there, which was, I think, a little bit cobalt, a little bit phthalo. And I love using Alizarin Crimson. I know it's not the most light fast color, and I switched to permanent for a bit, and then I was like, well, I still have the permanent, but I love the Alizarin Crimson even more. So like,
I mean, that's something else I love about plein air is it's a chance to discover and play with color and see what resonates with each and every one of us as artists. These different color combinations will appeal.
Come on. Why are you being silly and giving me more information than I asked for? And so now I've got this wave here. I've got darker right underneath the shadow, lighter up above. And now I'm trying to decide, okay, do I want one more? Do I want this to just be this kind of breaking to the ocean or to the shore? And I think for this one, I am going to just let it sort of become the break. And this photo doesn't have it exactly, but we can borrow from the video as well. And so now it's got a lot more white. And also as the wave breaks and comes to the shore, those other colors of the environment become all the more about it. If it's the sand, and this beach there's a red cinder cone right nearby. So the red sort of mixes in with the sand, and the sand is quite dark too. And so that is kind of present in the colors. And so I'm playing with some of that, but there's still some of that blue in there too. And as I was saying, we're looking for where is it dark, where is it light? Well, those darks and lights, we can also look at just the seafoam, just those white areas, and go, well, are they really just white? Like, are we really going to leave that just as a white plane? Or where are the dark and light values within the really light values of the wave? And sometimes I'm going with a little bit of bluish purple gray in there. Just using a little more of that shadow color to be, okay, where's it darker on the wave? Giving it those light little bits there that are softening that. But then also it's like, well, what else is happening in the environment? If there's sunlight out, then maybe there's a bit of sunlight hitting on there. And so I'm putting a little bit of yellow in those. And especially if that sunlight's out, well, there's some of that sunlight probably in the waves, or just like reflecting off the water, playing with that. If there's yellow sand or whitish sand underneath the blue, then having some yellow in there is absolutely amazing and brings the piece to life. And
what's that bright yellow you're using right there?
That was Daniel Smith Cadmium Yellow Light Hue. Since Daniel Smith, they don't do the true cadmiums, but they figured out how to make ones that are absolutely amazing without it being the true cadmiums. So
yeah,
it's like great.
And with those cadmium hues, you get a little bit more opacity than the others, I think, if I remember correctly.
I found them to be quite lovely. And so yeah, throwing a little bit of this in here. And the other one I had a different color sky, but just getting a little bit of sky in there. Maybe I'm going to give it a bit of an island in the background. And I already had some wet paint here and there, so some of it's flowing with. But here we are putting the suggestion of distance and land there without having to have worried about putting it in before we did the waves themselves. And then, of course, I've got the other one standing in the wings where I did the sky first. And I can definitely, this one's a very soft piece here. I can definitely give it more intensity. And so if I'm going to play with more intensity here, maybe there's a bit more of that in the shore break. And if I put a color one place, let's put it elsewhere as well. And so now we've got that one breaking even more there. And I think I need a little bit more fallow in there too. Yes, let's use some of that brilliant boldness of it there. But ooh, and look at that with that purple there. Oh, I love that. But I do feel like if I've got that color there, it needs to be elsewhere too. So I'm going to give it a little bit back behind, not everywhere, but let it relate to what's further away in subtle ways there.
That saturation's really added to the depth of your sketch too.
Yeah, because back here we have our dark and our lights are a lot closer together, and now I'm starting to bring that bolder up front. And so that was our process, and maybe I'll go through it one more time here. What do you have? I'd love to see what you've created.
Oh, I've just been messing around a little bit, though I accidentally had a little bit too much wash after my first wave break, the bigger one, so I didn't have space to make another. So I'm just noodling around, and I can share this with everybody at the end, or you can stop sharing your screen. I'm curious when you're gonna add a little bit more to the next sky. And I see a nice comment from Clara saying that they're surprised at how easy this is by seeing the shapes. I think you've just been simplifying it really beautifully of the shapes and the pattern, that you can put them together and create a believable space.
Wonderful, wonderful. Yeah, and then you can go out there to the actual ocean and see all this, and to have express the place that you are in, but you've got all of this in you. And so wonderful, wonderful. I love hearing that. Because nature, it's all patterns. And then there's the variation on the patterns. And so if we can see the pattern and we can see the variations on the pattern, then that's the richness that we get to express. And then, of course, it's how do you choose, how do you feel like expressing that pattern and the variation of the pattern today? So I'm going to go in, I've got my sky all ready for this one. I'm going to put in my horizon. And then make sure that line doesn't harden. So now it's soft. And I overlapped the sky just a little bit, mostly because I didn't want to. I was like, wait a second, give myself enough space for waves. That's what today's about, waves. And I think I actually want a little bit more darkness for the horizon. Sometimes that horizon is so soft. Sometimes it's very stark and bold. Sometimes it's hardly there. But I just dropped a little bit more Prussian blue in, and kind of unevenly, to give it that feeling of movements, even in the distance. And then, if there are waves breaking out on that far reef, or there's white caps from the wind, then I can come in a bit more. That time I did a couple separate strokes, so I've got sort of different waves that are breaking in the distance. I've got hard lines and I've got soft lines. And so some places where my brush created that hard difference between dark and light, and other spots where I am fading it out. And with that, I have a wave that is in the far distance. And
Maggie, do you ever go back over some of your images with like a little white gouache or any opaque additional white, to if there's anywhere that's gotten a little bit of a,
I rarely do that.
Mm-hmm.
I think, of course, I've seen people do amazing things with that. For me, that is one of the areas that in my own practice, I prefer to really stick with the white of the paper and to keep with that. Sometimes I will sort of work on pulling up little areas with my paper towel and a little bit of water. But I generally just leave a lot of white and then slowly get rid of that white through the course of the paper, or through the course of the painting. And so I think part of it also is being sort of the plein air practice that I've developed, is that I am being very much immediate in the moment and not waiting for parts to dry. But if I'm leaving a decent amount of white, then that can help keep areas from all flowing into each other. And then it's also letting me have those lighter values that I then adjust over time. Like this one here, there was a lot more wave, or a lot more white, and then I just sort of was building it as I went, but it was all in that one period of time. And deciding, okay, like I do need more darkness in here to show how the wave came around and whatnot, but not putting, I don't generally take any white gouache with me for my practice, but other people do amazing things with it. So this way it's going to be a little bit bigger. Maybe I'll have it come up there. Let me give myself maybe a different spot. Be inspired by here. And so I've did that line across. I'm turning it into a soft edge there. So I've got the under the wave, smoothing that out. And I haven't really used any of the dry brush, but using my brush without much color or ink, look at that wonderful area that I have down here now. Of course, the top of my wave hasn't been defined yet. I'll go back in and do that, but that's just what I was flowing with for the moment and was feeling.
We've got a question also from Teresa. Do you ever use backwash to simulate spray in the waves?
Backwash to wash more on top afterwards.
I think so. I'm not as familiar with that term, to be honest.
So this one, and of course, like every time it's a little bit different, but we're finding those patterns. I put quite a dark line on top. I'm going to put some darkness there, but I think talk about spray off the top of the waves. I'm going to put, it feels like it needs some of that impression underneath too, just a little bit of that shadow. But I'm thinking about the top of that wave and what it needs. And say those lines I have there are too solid up top, though I kind of like them, but maybe I don't want them solid like that everywhere where this wave is curling over and you can't actually see the curl, but you've got that darkness that's showing you that there. And so if I take my brush here and I'm just squeezing a little bit. Silly technology. You're so useful, and then also not. Back to painting. So lightening that part there, taking some of that off.
I got a little clarification on backwash, like
yes,
like having the water sort of run back to bloom.
Oh yes, definitely. And so this one I went more sort of, I did some dry brush there, just loving that. But the backwash, like I've got some of that happening in this one here. And so that definitely, it happens as well. So
you play with splattering sometimes too?
Not generally. I don't do too much splattering, but it's definitely whatever's calling to you in with your waves. And so maybe this next one.
Oh, you're going for it. A nice big one.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we're getting closer to the front. So now I've got one right here coming at us. I've got some really bold color there. Let's throw a little phthalo in there, maybe a little alizarin as well for some of that. But then
seems to me as you sit observing those waves, whether in person or in a video, really paying attention to where those little darker elements are, the dark saturated colors are a big part of that depth.
Yes, exactly. So that's why I said, like, this project is less about which color as noticing dark and light. And then within that, yeah, play with color. But number one, notice where is it dark and where is it light? And of course, that's the main, or that's the areas that are really dark or really light, but then also within the subtleties as well, looking for the dark and light. So this one here. Oh,
I was going to say, I'm noticing as well that you have a terrific sense of the wave shapes, where you're not just doing this really regular S shape, up and down, up and down. It reminds me of like, I come from a place where we have a lot of trees, pine trees, and it's easy to think about like a classic Christmas tree shape, but letting go of that and embracing that irregularity. So it's not just too regular in every shape. And that's something I'm really enjoying. It's very, you find some more organic shapes, it seems to me.
And that comes like if you're out drawing pine trees, you're going to notice how each pine tree is different. And with waves, every wave is different. And so even though I showed like, okay, here's sort of the like quick drawing anatomy of the wave, every wave is different. And so drawing from video, drawing from life is going to give you that variation. And it's not going to give you the crux of getting that wave just so, because it kept moving. And so you're getting a little bit of that one, a little bit of the next one. And even through that, you're going to get that gesture in with time. I think really like painting waves, there's so much from just being there on the ocean and doing it a lot. And if it's a stream or a river that's your place, then doing that as well. I mean, these were 3-minute studies, and some of them I sort of worked from what are the lines I see in the environment first, and other than what are the fields or the strokes of color that I see first, and then whichever version I did first, I did the other part second. But just sort of even like that, I'm like, I felt so much of the ocean in these little squiggles. And so a lot different from what we're doing right now, but spending that time noticing and painting quickly because it's moving.
Are you working on a hot press paper?
I am working on hot press paper right now. I always keep hot press and cold press handy. I love them both. It's just sort of how I feel on a certain day is kind of how that ends up going. But yeah, I really enjoy hot press for a lot of things, and less so with my ocean, but in a lot of my work, I do use a ink brush as well, and I'll use this prior to painting. This one I think needs a.
Oh, we love that. That's the Pentel brush pen.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I love these, but I figured and sometimes my waves have those marks in them, but a lot of times they are just the water. And like a painting like this, I've got the Pentel ink lines in there, but I didn't use them in the ocean because the ocean is just so fluid. So I didn't want that definition, but other times they find their way in. I think the examples I grabbed today have less of that, but sometimes I do have some gentle black lines that are defining what's happening with the wave there. This one needs a little bit of the break on top in some of the areas. It's what it seems to be telling me. Where is it about to flow over? And it can be just in a couple little areas there. I'll put some extra water in there, let those colors sort of flow around. And it's also feeling kind of too hard edge over here. So I'm actually going to soften a couple edges and over here too. Let that flow over the edge a little bit. Let's drop some water in there. Might redefine a little bit of hard edge. Oops. A couple little happy accidents. Let that flow. And this one, the sky, I put a little bit of quinacridone rose in with that cobalt. So I'm going to come back, and that's going to be a color that I add in the white areas of the waves because they reflect their surroundings. And so remembering that was a color that was a part of this scene, and drop some of that in, some of it here. And so now it's starting to just bringing that pink into the waves there a little bit, right there, kind of a lot, but love it. And so I'm actually doing that dry brush on that area one more time. And so this is really wonderful for doing like where those waves have already broken, left that sea foam there. And so having some of that just floating there, and that one's coming together. I think this area needs a little bit more. But
oh, and the time's just been flying, Maggie.
I know. I just looked at the time. I was like, oh, well. Well, what final questions do we have? We've
had just a couple. Someone's curious if you've ever used opera pink as another color.
I haven't played with opera pink. I think that's an incredible color, but for me, I haven't found that one as one that I feel it in the landscape that I'm working with so much, maybe in certain flowers or whatnot. But on the warm side, I've got quinacridone rose, which is what I use for my magenta when I want a true primary red, alizarin crimson, and then I've got parasol orange, and I've got little bit of cadmium yellow light there. So love those warm colors, and it's really like, it's when I'm painting, I'm very much thinking about where is it warm, where is it cool in the colors.
These have come together so beautifully and so quickly. I mean, what you were able to just do and share with us all in such a short time.
And I want to see what everyone else made who painted along.
Faces. I'd love to hear, what else you've got coming up and where people can connect with you. We know we've got your website and Instagram. And so, anyone who has been painting along, if you do post anything, be sure to tag both of us. We'll have those in our description because we love seeing what you do as well.
Definitely. Yeah. I want to see what you all made, and to, anyone who wants to talk story more, connect with you online. Yes. Oh, I love it.
Little studies.
I love the green blues. Like, you've got the cool blues, and then you've also got the turquoises in there. I
do love, this is one of my palettes I've been carrying around. It's time to sort of clean it up for summer, but, yeah, color is so much fun. And Maggie, really appreciate you taking the time to dive into these patterns and colors of waves, because like you said, it just applies to so many different things of different types of water. I've been thinking about the clouds as well, a subject I really love, which is they're so similar in many ways, of that the depth and pattern. And
exactly. Find the pattern, find the variation of the pattern. Share me with what you've got at paintfair.com. That's where all my art things are. And if you want to paint with me online, one-on-one, we can do that. If you're on Maui, you're going to be visiting Maui, we can paint together here. I have these travel letters that I was making them monthly for a while, but I've been helping my husband launch our boat business. And so those you can purchase individually online, which are inspiration that takes you sort of in a journey to somewhere that I've painted on site. And it's an illustrated journey and has a video art lesson connected to it. And there's other resources and beautiful ways to connect with your surroundings and see more of the beauty of the world through painting.
Oh, well, that just is all terrific. And everyone who joined us, we so appreciate you all and being part of this community and sharing and the inspiration and ideas and tools and techniques. And please stay tuned. We've got our newsletter is the best place to hear about our upcoming demos and events. And of course, we always post to socials as well. But we love staying connected and have a whole archive of our recordings that are posted to our Learn page on our website, which I'll post the link. And then you can, of course, find them on YouTube as well. So really appreciate you all, and hope everyone just has a fabulous rest of your day.
Thank you so much. Mahalo.
Mahalo.